it became a wave that you can't resist, an irrevocable voice in your head every day going, this cannot be the way the rest of my life will be, you know? And then every day you walk into the office, that voice is going like, yeah, no, this isn't it. There has to be something better.
The Urban Exodus podcast shares the wisdom, wit, and stories of those who decided to embark on the road less traveled, to pursue their own interpretation of the good life. Small business owners, change makers, artists, farmers, and more, working towards building a better future for themselves and their fellow citizens. The people I've met through this project give me energy and hope for a better future. May their inspirational words and practical advice embolden and guide you on your own journey. This podcast is for country dreamers, rural folk, and urban dwellers alike who want to feel more connected to the natural world and the purpose and choices in their lives. I'm Melissa Hessler. Welcome to the Urban Exodus. Urban Exodus is a labor of love and is only made possible by listener support. To support our programming, please consider making a listener contribution or joining our Patreon community for access to bonus features, rapid-fire interviews, videos, and so much more. I'm excited to invite you to my conversation with Jean Voronkova. Jean is a former corporate lawyer from Singapore who seemingly had it all made, but was deeply unhappy following a conventional path to success. Jean grew up in a traditional Singaporean family and had conservative money and lifestyle values drilled into her from an early age. She was expected to either become a lawyer or a doctor, with no wiggle room to explore another path. She did everything that was expected of her, yet she longed for something different. A day of surfing changed the entire trajectory of her life. Surfing allowed her the time and space to feel truly awake, and it made her start to question things. After much consideration, she left her high-paying law career to pursue a simpler, more intentional, and happier life. In our conversation, we speak about Jean's journey from corporate law to surfing, how she built passive income to support herself, the trap of being a workaholic, breaking away from convention, and so much more. She offers deep wisdom and practical advice. I hope you enjoy it. This is a story about courage, listening to your inner voice, and the profound joy of living with less. All right, so I am very, very excited to have on the podcast Jean Voronkova. Jean was formerly a corporate lawyer who left her job and decided to just go a different path, a path towards her happiness, a path towards what felt right in her life. She met her partner, Vitaly Voronkov, and they started a life together and most recently embarked on this adventure to live in Bali full time. And I'm just so excited to have you on the podcast, Jean. Jean has an amazing YouTube channel that I really recommend you all check out. She does these incredible videos talking about, what's important in your life and really evaluating that internal path inside you towards happiness. So first off, Jean, I'd love if you would share a little bit of your personal backstory, where you grew up and how you got to where you are now.
I grew up in Singapore. Singapore calls itself a neo-Confucianist society. You might not be familiar with that term, New Confucian. But basically what it says is that it is a traditional conservative Asian society. And so was my family, traditional conservative Asian. That describes all of us very well. It is affluent. It is financially successful. But those are the core values of Singapore and Singaporeans in general, I think. I always did well academically, and then I eventually ended up in law school due to family pressure. So it wasn't my dream at all. But, my mom basically said, get the degree, and then you can go off and do whatever you want after you graduate. And so that was the compromise with the family. It was supposed to be anyway. So then the backstory to that was, I think since I was 15, I didn't need to because my family is very comfortably middle class. But I was curious, I wanted to go out to work. I wanted to be active. So ever since I was 15, I'd done like a variety of different jobs. I started off being a student photographer for the Chinese newspaper in Singapore. It's called 联合早报. So I went in there. I was mixing around with media people, journalists, professional photographers, and they were teaching me, and I would cover some small news stories. And every time my photos were published, I get paid for it. So it's kind of cool. And then from there on, I started doing a bunch of other things, a little bit of writing, and then eventually I branched into entertainment. So I was doing theater, I was doing TV acting, commercials. I was hosting programs, children's stuff for Disney as well. So yeah, a bunch of jobs. And I didn't really want to be a lawyer. I wanted to be an entertainer, I guess. And I was already somewhat doing that. I was working along those lines. But anyway, for the family, I went to law school. And midway through that, I discovered Buddhism as a way of life, not really as a religion. And then I started to feel like the other stuff that I was doing, a lot of it was based on, there was a huge emphasis on superficial values, like appearances and, who you know and all that kind of stuff. And I felt like it wasn't good for me. I wasn't becoming the person I wanted to become. So in the end, I left all of that behind somewhere around the third year of law school. And I just focused on law. And after I graduated, I went into practice and I stayed there for almost 7 years before I had the epiphany and kind of went like, okay, yeah, that's it. Bye, guys. I'm off.
What was it like being a lawyer? I mean, early days at a law firm, they call it paying your dues for a reason. What was that quality of life like in those 7 years that you were working as a lawyer?
I was very, very poor. I would be still in the office on a Saturday night, or rather Sunday morning at about 5 a.m., preparing for trial. And that was in the first 2 years when I was doing litigation work. It got to a point where at one point I had a free Sunday, and it was just such a rare commodity. I just hadn't had a free day, a completely free day for so long. I kind of like sat at home and I was like, I don't remember what I used to do with one of these. So that was in my first 2 years of practice. Actually, somewhere along the way, I kind of fell into depression as well. And I developed insomnia from that period, which still plagues me till this day. It's been so many years, but I just, it's been one of those life-changing things.
I feel like there's a certain level of trauma that these corporate environments kind of inflict on people, especially when they're young. It's like it's almost setting you up to stay in that profession long term, because all of a sudden, like, some of that responsibility subsides and then you're stuck because you're making good money and you don't have to work the 90-hour work weeks or 80-hour work weeks that you're used to. I wondered what that epiphany was like. When did you decide? What were the pieces? Because there are so many people, I think, that probably are listening to this podcast right now that are stuck in that golden handcuffs situation. And I know that you were about to make partner at your firm, which would have meant some of that grind would have been lifted off of you. What built your courage up enough to move away from that life?
Well, it wasn't as if I was on the cusp of partnership. I think in Singapore, it's a very stratified thing. You reach the year in which most of your peers would make partner. I mean, honestly, I wasn't that great a lawyer. I wasn't very vested in it. And I hadn't been for several years by that time. So I guess it wasn't really like one massive single event that caused the change, right? It crumbled a little bit over many, many years, leading to the Big Bang, where I just quit and went off. I think at the point where my life took off on a tangent away from the whole, legal partnership path and law for the rest of my life thing was basically when I discovered a different lifestyle, when I picked up surfing in Singapore. At that time, it was windsurfing. I say that because right now in my life, I know all three. I do windsurfing, kite surfing, and wave surfing. But at that point in time, I was this like nerdy little kid. My main hobbies were shopping and clubbing in Singapore. Like my extracurricular activities in school was like stuff like librarian, student counselor. So I was not sporty at all. But through a friend, I picked up surfing in Singapore. And I think it's not really about the surfing per se, but entering this alternate dimension where life wasn't about the typical Singaporean things. See, Singaporean life is the conventional Singaporean life is very uniform, right? People go shopping, watch movies in the theater, sometimes gold class, expensive tickets, your own cushion lounge. And you can order food straight to your sofa chair or whatever. And they eat out at expensive restaurants, and they're all running the hamster wheel in the corporate world, and they're all striving to get further along that line. So then I was a lawyer. All my friends were lawyers, pretty much. I come from a family, middle class, whose aspirations were, hey, be a lawyer, be successful, in the corporate world, and you'll be happy for the rest of your life. Those were my parents' aspirations. They mean well, right? They want the best for me. So that was the world I was circulating. I work hard, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I do things like champagne brunch at the Hyatt. I go clubbing, at a club owned by my friends. We open bottles, and then in between there's shopping, there's Dior handbags, there's Ferragamo shoes, things like that. When I picked up the surfing, for the first time, I was exposed to a bunch of people who basically hang out at the beach every weekend. Nobody made plans, everyone just rocks up. Nobody cares what you wear, and then, the situation, the conditions for the surfing in Singapore isn't ideal, which means that if you actually want to surf, you got to pretty much spend the big part of your day there at the beach waiting. And then if you get lucky, some wind blows through, and then you go like, it's coming. You run for your gear, you put your sail on your thing, and then you run and you just go out to catch the surf before it's over. It completely changed my life. I met a bunch of people of all ages, and they were all very down to earth, and I was introduced to the simple joys of just, good conversation. A couple of beers or two at that point in time I drank, and then, sport. Like, you struggle really hard, the sail's really heavy, you get bruised all over. But then, when you get a good gust of wind, it's like a motorbike on the water. It's exhilarating. You're close to nature. It's quiet. There's no hustle and bustle. It's an epiphany in its own way, that alternative way of life. No obsessing about your clothes, what to wear to your office, how others perceive you. I think it's how others perceive you. Is that important actually to all those people hanging out at the beach there? No, it wasn't. And it got me thinking, right? And then eventually, I think everybody who does, everyone who does sport or art seriously, they leave the mainstream behind, the conventions of the mainstream, and they enter this alternate dimension. I believe they can all relate to what I'm saying, And then, from then on, it was just, at first I was trying to juggle being a lawyer. It became a wave that you can't resist, an irrevocable voice in your head every day going, this cannot be the way the rest of my life will be, And then every day you walk into the office, that voice is going like, yeah, no, this isn't it. There has to be something better.
Your story just resonates with me so much because I led a similar path working in the corporate world, always feeling like this can't be it. Looking at other people that were working in my company and seeing them as they got older, and just like this repeated pattern of like, this is where I am, this is where I live. I'm owned basically by this company. And having that kind of breakout, I wonder also, when you decided to step away from that life. Obviously, surfing really emboldened and guided you to that decision. Were you worried about, I think that there's this real societal push, you said from your parents, also just society in general, of having enough money to provide for yourself and stepping away from kind of a career where you're making really decent money. How did you prepare for that from a financial perspective, or did you?
I was not really prepared for it. I think I was halfway prepared for it. I think that in the lead up to my actual resignation was already maybe a year, 2 years of, okay, we got to do something about this. This is not happening, when every day when I went into work. And then because of that, I started looking at my situation, right? I've got an apartment, I've got a car. If I threw my job away, how am I going to deal with all of these things, So then I had some vague ideas. And at one point, I did sit down and do this exercise, which is very similar to something that Tim Ferriss came up with. It's called fear setting. And I actually have a video on my channel about how to conquer fear using this exercise, because I didn't know about Tim Ferriss and his fantastic book, The 4-Hour Workweek at that time, and this fear setting exercise. But I did something exactly the same. I sat down and I went like, okay, if I, had no job and no money, what's the apartment going to do, right? There's a mortgage on it. How am I going to service that? I can rent it out, the car. Okay, the car's got to go. I won't be in Singapore to drive it around anyway. So that's going to go. Some cash is going to come in and stuff like that. Like, how much savings do I have? What stocks do I have at the moment? What can I liquidate so that, it doesn't become a liability while I'm not physically in Singapore, stuff like that. So I think that doing an exercise like that really helps a lot to convert your fear from this shapeless, scary shadow on the wall monster to things that you go like, okay, this is manageable. I can do this maybe, right? It also helped that I kind of had a vague idea that probably if I quit, my first stop would be to go to a place that I was familiar with from a surfing perspective, and that was Vietnam. Because I made many holiday trips there for surfing with my friends over the years. So I was actually familiar with the cost of living there. So that's very important, right? It actualizes what I will need every month to live on if I didn't have a job, how long my savings are going to go. So when you actualize all these things, you itemize it, you put it down in an Excel sheet, it becomes not so much as scary, but just something actionable. So that helps a lot, convincing people to take the leap into the unknown, I think. It makes them feel prepared, makes things more certain, more concrete.
You mentioned Vietnam, so let's go to the next kind of phase of your step into this new life. So you ended up moving to Vietnam to teach surfing, and actually that's where you met your husband, Vitaly. And I'd love for you to talk about your time in Vietnam and what that was like to take that kind of first step out of the life that you had kind of previously known into the unknown.
Right. So there are different elements to that question, right? I think, but I didn't know what I was actually going to do when I first went across to Vietnam. I wasn't even certain if my departure from city life and my legal career was going to be a permanent thing. I just kind of grabbed my cash, settled my stuff in Singapore, and then I went across. My parents didn't even know I wasn't really planning to come back. I couldn't bring myself to tell them what was actually happening in my head. I know very clearly what I want. I didn't have the courage to say it out loud to Asian parents. They're just, oh, what you gonna give your dad for his birthday this year? Oh, heart attack? No, I don't think so. You know what I mean? They were so proud of me and my career and everything. So then, but they understood that I was burnt out. They saw how hard I had worked over the 6+ years. I just said, I'm going off on a sabbatical and I'm going to do what I love. So I'm going to go surfing and I will be back at some point. See you. And they accepted that. They're wonderful people, just conservative. So when I went across, the only thing that I could possibly do in the new place in Vietnam was actually to become an instructor of surfing. And to do that, I needed to get qualified. So I think I spent the first 8 months unemployed, just living off my savings and training up my surfing. And then I went for the instructor course. I passed the test. I got my license, and then I walked down the main beach in Vietnam, in this town, Mui Ne, where there were about, I think, 32 surf schools. And I went one by one and asked, do you have a job for a female instructor? Right? Because, a lot of places, they don't want to take female instructors. We're smaller, the clients might prefer men as well, just the general perception of men being more physically capable, perhaps. You might be in safer hands with a guy, maybe. I think somewhere along with the 26th or 27th school down the road, I got a job.
And what was it like teaching and being in this new environment? I feel like teaching is so inspiring too, and to be teaching something that you love. What was that experience like?
It was very, very fulfilling. Okay, from the Asian perspective, everyone thought I was utterly mad because the Asian way is like, girls, you're soft and sweet and you should sit in a corner and be comfortable and type something on a computer in the aircon room. And there I was under the sun, dragging 80, 90 kg guys around in the water. And it's physically hard, I got really tanned, and tanned skin isn't popular here. You know what I mean? There's even this common perception, like if you're fair, then you're like from a higher caste or a higher class. If you've got like tan skin, that's because you're out there tilling the fields, being a farmer or something like that. I mean, but that's convention and perception. The real actual truth is that, oh my God, I loved it. I loved it. It's still one of the things that I absolutely love doing. I love teaching people surfing because later on in life, from starting off as a kite instructor, I eventually came to own a boutique surf school with my husband in a different city in Vietnam. And, we built it up over 3 years. We serviced, I don't know, God, thousands of customers. And the thing about it, I think that made our small business a success was because both me and my husband teach for the joy of teaching. Because that moment when you see your student, getting up and riding, you're like, yes, yay! And you love the sport yourself so much, and then your students are paying like I don't know $200-300 to learn it with you. So the people that are there in front of you, they're committed to learning, they're excited about it. And when you enable them to get there, that is the best feeling ever. And we have helped so many people that way. And it's also, very, very gratifying when your students then, come back with the very positive feedback and they try to help your business on TripAdvisor by leaving a really good review and on Google and stuff. And then your business grows from there. Yeah, all of that has started with me teaching kite on Mui Ne Bay, with the 26th surf school that I went to ask for a job at. But teaching is very, very different from lawyering, from being a photographer. It's a very direct way of giving, I think. And when you have passion for what you teach, and when the student is eager to learn, it is a magical combination. And you make peanuts, of course, but, it makes you so happy. So that was also when, it was kind of like validating the initial steps I took in a different direction, right? I mean, lifestyle-wise, it was completely different. I mean, I went from having champagne brunch at the Hyatt to living off, I don't know, I think my monthly budget was maybe $500 or $600, including rent.
Wow.
So then, yeah. But that's also the magic and beauty of places like Vietnam, right? You live on what looks like a really minuscule budget compared to live life in other countries. But you are so happy. There's the sunshine, there's the blue sky, great weather, there's good surfing, everyone's happy. You live in a surf town and, the vibes chill.
Bali also is a very multicultural place. And you've mentioned that there are expats from all over the world that live in Bali. And I wondered what the effect was on the local culture and how well you think the locals and foreigners kind of integrate with one another. And if you feel like you've really found community there.
Because we've lived in a couple other places, I think it's enlightening to answer your question with a couple of contrasting attitudes, at least. I think in Vietnam, My personal observation is that there is a bit of anti-foreigner sentiment. There are a lot of foreigners there as well. In the areas I have lived in, I have observed that there is a little bit of stratification, right? The locals and the foreigners do not integrate so much. There are many reasons for that, like cultural barriers, language barriers, economic barriers. Here in Bali, it is so much better. It is actually, I think outside of Singapore, maybe the most integrated I have seen, or maybe even Singapore doesn't compare in certain aspects because there are also a lot of tensions now between races in Singapore. Not just races, I mean, between foreigners and local Singaporeans, because the pandemic situation of the last 2 years has been a tight squeeze on everybody, right? And when resources become a squeeze, then, governments need to say, I prioritize somebody, right, in the distribution. Because when you say you distribute things equally, the locals are going to be unhappy anyway. So there's no way to win politically, right? So then my comments about Bali, I think I need to clarify that my comments about Bali need to be specific to the neighborhood that you live in within Bali itself. So we live in the Uluwatu area. And basically this area is where most foreigners who live here are surfers. And they choose to live in this area because of the surfing. And it also means that a lot of them have been here for many, many years because the foreigner surfing community here have rooted down since 60 plus years ago. So many of them married locally. A lot of them are it's not the super young crowd. Okay. And in this area, we are not densely populated. Everyone has a lot of space. And a lot of the foreigners here, a lot of the Bulays, I noticed they speak they speak Bahasa Indonesia really well. So they have integrated the people who have came and settled in this neighborhood for surfing. They came, they married, they started businesses, they speak Bahasa Indonesia, they integrated. And they have real local surf friends, right? In the surf world, right? Where I think it's a very different world from, say, a job-centric kind of world or anything else. Everyone's just out there in flip-flops and board shorts. And you have real friendships between local people and foreigners. So this is something that I love seeing. I think it's a very different scene across town in, say, a place like Canggu in Bali, which is the digital nomad enclave, right, within Bali. I dislike it over there because it's very, very dense population, very, very busy, a lot of traffic, a lot of people. I would say heavily white. And I think that over there, probably the tendency is for people who come in and out of Bali and stay there, they tend to be more transient in nature. They probably integrate less and they probably, we have seen examples of people who just live in their own foreigner circle, right? They've been here 2 years and then they go I don't speak a single word of Bahasa Indonesia. So there are people like that. I think it's ultimately an individual choice as well. Depends on your attitude. But so I think it also depends on the neighborhood within Bali. But I think in Bali here, really peaceful, really effective integration has been achieved in certain parts.
I think that everything that you speak to is similar for anyone that is leaving a city and moving to maybe a more rural or isolated community because, rural communities are often more insular, even if it's a different country or even if it's in the same country. And so I wondered if you had any advice for people who are maybe making the transition from city living on how to choose a community or a location that feels right for them and ways to set themselves up to make a more successful transition and to feel like they integrate themselves into their new community.
Well, I think that wherever you go in this world, and I traveled a lot on my lawyer salary previously because, it's fun. I like to do that as well. For surfing, I go to a lot of different places. But I think that whether you're there as a transient tourist or as a long-term resident, basically if you're humble and you smile easy, and try to speak the local language a little bit, even if it's just 3 words that you say over and over again, like thank you, hello, and good morning, or how much. I mean, everybody can learn these basic phrases, right, in every language that you need to use in different places. And I think it puts you on the right starting point with the locals wherever you are. Right? It shows that you're kind of open and receptive to them. You're smiling and you're not going in like, oh, I'm the big foreign person in this place. That's always an attitude that's never welcome, I think. So then in the longer run, I think if you want to settle in and be integrated, it's really just about understanding the culture of the place where you're at, and not just understanding elements of it, but understanding it holistically, the whole big picture. Because if you just pick elements, there's always going to be stuff that looks really weird to you, right? So then it's not just seizing on a couple of like strange habits, or just looking at people eating noodles with chopsticks and going, hey, that's really weird. But just making an attempt to understand the culture from a holistic perspective, because everything in isolation can look a little bit strange, like how American people wear shoes inside their house. For us here in Asia, it's like, that's really weird. For you guys, it's normal, right? And then when you come over and then your friend goes, no, the shoes go out. It's strange for you guys sometimes. Things like that. But I think in terms of finding the right place for you when you want to leave where you've been all your life, I think that question is not really how one should think about this, because I think the right way to approach this lifestyle is to see it as an ongoing journey that doesn't ever end, right? Because you can't really expect yourself to go like, okay, right, I'm 25, I'm living in Maine right now, but I'm going to uproot myself, go to Taiwan, and that's where I'll be for the rest of my life, even though I've never been there yet. Right? So like the thing is, places in the world can really defy your imagination. And you also need time. You need to spend time in places, considerable time, before you actually really know if it is truly for you or not. You learn about yourself, and you're also continually growing, where with every new location that you spend a certain amount of time in. For example, the first time I went to Vietnam, I went to Ho Chi Minh, Saigon as it's known. I stopped there for 3 days on the way to Cambodia. And I was like, oh my God, I am never coming back to this crappy place ever again, because it is so noisy. There's so much just going on, constantly. And I'm actually in the category of like highly sensitive persons. So I basically had a horrendous headache for 3 days when I was there. And I guess what? I ended up spending 8 years of my life in that country in the end, and coming to revel and to really enjoy the noise and the chaos of Saigon. I never lived there. I was never based there. But hey, actually for a certain stage of my life, it really suited what I needed. It was dynamic. It was exciting. It had possibilities. It was always changing. And, that was great. So I think people need to move, and it doesn't need to be like, I'm not talking about going to 30 different destinations and spending 8 days in each destination. I think everyone is different. Everyone has their own style of traveling. I like to spend months in a place before moving on, to kind of like settle in, actually see the real local rhythm, as opposed to like the tourist circuits that, you get shoved into every time, the first time you enter a new country. And I think the journey never ever ends, right? It's like, at 25 now, maybe you find that Canada is the right place for you. And then maybe at 30, you get bored, you decide you want to see some of South America, you go there, spend another 5 years, and then you go like, hey, maybe Asia or Africa, right? I've been to all of these places. They're all so different, you can't just like... So I think that it's an ongoing transition, and it's a never-ending changing process. You're changing, your environment is also changing. But people should definitely do it. They should definitely go out, try different places, live in different places, experience life. And the thing is, even if they do that, and then in the end they decide, you know what, the place I started off in is actually the best for me, and they go back there, it is not, I mean, they might have gone full circle, but it is not a wasted journey. Because now they will be back in the place they originally started off from without the what if inside their heads for the rest of their life, right? You know, they will be back in that place, and that attitude of being there will be, I chose this. I went everywhere, and this is the best place for me, the person that I am now. So you have that background knowledge to support your choice. It is not a choice born out of, or rather just, you know, a situation born out of not choosing and not taking action.
I just wanted to give an enormous thank you to all of the listeners who have made contributions towards the production of this podcast. Every season, I spend about 100 hours preparing, writing, editing, interviewing, sketching, distributing, and I have hard costs for my editor and hosting fees. It means so much to me that you find enough value and meaning in this work to pledge your support to keep it going. If you haven't had a chance to contribute, we've made it really easy. Just click the support button on the top of urbanexodus.com and pledge any amount that you like. Or join the Urban Exodus Patreon community. Thank you again. I feel so lucky to be a part of the amazing global community that this project has manifested.
It's living an intentional life. It's being very intentional about listening to your intuition. And also, like you said, the journey, you learn so much about yourself on that journey. Because I think that in our modern society, in a lot of our cultures, you know, in the US, it's pursuing the American dream, right? It's like the 2 cars, the house. And then you can do all of these things, and then you get to do what you want to do, right? They always put it at the very end of the journey, but who knows if you'll ever reach the end of the journey. So stepping out of that comfort zone and trusting yourself and maybe feeling uncomfortable, right? Because that journey isn't comfortable. And I wondered if you could kind of talk about stepping out of comfort zones and things that you have found that have been really helpful for you when you find yourself in a completely new environment, on ways to just feel rooted in the uncomfortableness of it.
In the long term, I guess, have I really felt uncomfortable staying in a place? I have felt less than optimum in a place where the food wasn't to my liking. And I felt like the local people, I felt uncomfortable there as a woman, teaching surfing in wet, tight clothing. It was a very conservative place. I don't want to drop the name of the place because, you know, the rest of it is really nice. Just, you know, where I was staying was a conservative area, very, very backward, very, very little food options, and some people were really, really lovely. The thing is, you can't judge, right? You can't judge. Race is not a telling or deciding factor at all. You know, there are good and bad people from every race, every religion. It's just really who you encounter on the road. How do you deal with that discomfort? Well, I don't. I go through with it. I tell myself I'm here for 3 months. I'm going to enjoy it as best as I can. And I go like, okay, this is not really somewhere where I want to spend another 3 months. But I learned a lot in the 3 months that I just went through. You know, probably lost a lot of weight as well because I don't like the food. I did. That was the only time in my life where I could really see like very defined abdominals. But like, yeah, I think that with experiences like that, you don't really ameliorate the discomfort. You go through with it, you learn from it, and then you move on to the next stage in life. I don't know if that makes sense to you. But
No, it does. I'd love for you to kind of talk about what your days look like now in Bali, because you and your husband have really made so many intentional choices to get yourself to where you are now. And so I'd love for you to just walk us through a typical day, what it looks like.
a typical day, what it looks like. Right. Okay. So usually we wake up early because we go to bed early. We go for a surf in the morning when it's possible because right now we are in the wet season, so sometimes it's not that great. Sometimes we give it a skip. But if we give it a skip, then we might head to the park nearby for a walk just to be in nature. I try to do a bit of meditation in the mornings with our morning tea. So that's the mornings. A bit of time with the dogs as well. The weather's just great here. You know, it might be a little bit too hot sometimes, but like just, it's always sunny, blue skies, cool, chilly wind, lots of nature. And I have a beautiful garden. So I just like hanging around there. Oh, I muck around the garden in the morning as well. I get up to a lot of things. Mornings are my most productive. Oh, it is also when I journal. So, yeah, that's my morning, doing all that stuff. Sometimes I do the dishes if they're still in the sink. So that's my day in the morning. And then after that, lunch, we cook or we get something from outside. And then the rest of the day is usually like if we've got videos to edit for YouTube or something, maybe I'm writing a script for an idea for something that I want to shoot that's nice, so I'll write that down, try to create the little elements to it. If I'm not busy with the tube, I would probably do some painting or reading. Like these are the elements that make my life meaningful now, right? Because these are the things that I so love to do. But in any other configuration, I can't see myself ever having the time to do all of these, especially all in one day. But here it's actually possible. It all happens in a day. I'm absolutely shagged out at the end of the day when I have a good productive day like that. Like today, actually, I was really tired already by like 5 o'clock. I had a good day today. A bit of painting, a bit of music, the dogs, walking, no surfing today, working on miscellaneous things, journaling, meditating, doing the dishes, cooking. I don't know. Sometimes like we get this comment from people like, "Oh my God, you don't have a job. You don't work in Bali. What do you do all day?" I'm like, I'm bloody busy, man.
Absolutely. Well, what I think is really interesting, Jean, is you started in the creative arts, right? You talked about it a little bit. You were a host, you were a presenter, you were a photographer, and you've kind of come full circle back to those elements that you really loved. But in the sellable world of those elements, right? Typically, it's all about how you look and it's what's sellable and all of those different things. But now you're creating something of your own, and you have the creative control on what you're putting out there into the world. So I'd love for you to kind of talk about your YouTube journey, because it really is pulling back those skills that you used to love. It's journalism, it's giving this kind of gift, this informational gift to people who might feel that your message really resonates with them. So I'd love for you to talk about kind of your journey into YouTube and creating your own content and that kind of full circle coming back to those creative roots that you had.
When we started the YouTube channel, it was actually my husband who powered the whole thing through from the inception. He was the one who thought it was a good idea because I am very tech unsavvy. I think that is the word. So I'm always the person who likes a physical book, right? Even though I live with a Kindle because of the nature of my life, but I don't keep up with what's happening in the tech world, and I don't fiddle around with gadgets. Back when I was doing photography, it was film. None of these, like 1 million digital little thingies that does something magical. So the hubs takes care of that area of things, but it was also his idea that, hey, let's start a YouTube channel. The school's doing well. We have a different life, right? Something interesting people might want to watch. And also, like it would be a really good way for our friends and family to finally understand what we do out there. Because my life and his life together is like, it's a little bit abstract for people back home. For my friends, for my family, like nobody the hell knows what I was doing before the YouTube channel. Nobody understood other than the people who actually visited me when I was working in Vietnam or Bali, surfing and teaching. So then it started off like that. My husband's interest in videography and YouTube, as well as, all these other reasons. And for a really long time, our main audience is really friends and family. So it was just like comfortable. There wasn't really a concerted direction for the channel. It was only really after we came to Bali that the thing really accelerated and grew in momentum. And then all of a sudden, I had an actual audience. And then the thought was, hey, there has always been some messages that I thought would be really useful to put out there for people. And one of those things was about this whole idea that the urban exodus is founded on, right? This transitioning from a different life. Because in all this time since I did my crazy jump across, there have been so many people who knew what I did or found out about what I did. And they come to talk to me quietly, They go like, how do you do it? Especially fellow Singaporeans. I think that a lot of Singaporeans they might be feeling very lonely, very trapped, very depressed about their life there, but they don't know of a different way or a way out. After I did my crazy stunt, sort of, as is regarded back home, people come and talk to me about it all the bloody time. And then you're like, okay, like I really want to help these people. I really wish that I can tell them so much more than what I'm telling them over the space of a 20-minute catch-up coffee. And I really want to tell them, it's okay. If you want to do this, it's okay. It's nothing really scary. But I always felt like I was unable to deliver the message adequately until now. Now there's actually a vehicle where I can make a video, I can tell them what I really want to say uninterrupted, pre-scripted, so I'm not just rambling. I can show them no one's going to die if you actually try to transition out of something that you're really unhappy in, a life track that doesn't work for you.
You said in one of your YouTube videos that if the formula doesn't work for you, you are not alone. Put aside convention and ask yourself what truly makes you happy in life. And I also receive a lot of messages from people who want to make those big changes in their lives. And they're very afraid to quit the convention. They're afraid to leave their jobs. They're afraid to leave health insurance. They're afraid to leave all of those kind of creature comforts and conveniences that we become so reliant on in our modern day and age. And I really appreciate that your YouTube channel, in addition to having these really beautiful videos and messages to just have people, listen to their inner voice, also is very practical. Like you have a lot of practical information on there as well about, how much it costs to live and what your daily expenses are and all of these different things. Because I think that one thing that I constantly hear from people, well, from the people that I've interviewed and to me as well, is you're living my dream life. I wish that I could do that. And that's like a little bit hard to hear that because you're like, you can do this. You want to just give them the gift of empowering them to take that step out. And I wonder, just from a financial perspective, how you guys have diversified your income streams, just how you make that work from a financial perspective now. And any advice that you would have to people on maybe starting a side hustle or their own business or something to kind of make it so that they can set themselves more up for success when they leave that steady paycheck income that they're used to.
I think we should all start early. And I think I benefited greatly from being a Singaporean because it is also the environment of the mentality of the entire country that you have to have enough financial reserves always for your life. And most Singaporeans, I believe, are very financially savvy. They know about investment products. They know that, if you leave your money in the bank, inflation will just devalue it over time. You have to be actively managing your money. So it's from that kind of environment in which I grew up, right? So I feel perhaps very privileged, very blessed that I was slightly enabled in this direction. Like I knew that, this isn't something that you just muddle through or you just earn your monthly paycheck and you don't think about it. Asians being Asians, Asians are big believers in prudence, savings, not being too ostentatious. investing. When my husband and I understood that our dream life was to actually live in Bali, then we went like, okay, how can we make that happen? And so then again, it was the same process as with Vietnam all over again, right? You evaluate what you have incoming as income, and then you try to work out exactly what you need as living costs in Bali if you weren't working. And then you arrive at a number, and then you work backwards from there, right? You project back, like how much can you save? How much can that investment bring you? How many percent? And, across a year, how many of these do you need? You work out the details bit by bit. And it happened for us. We made money from the surf school. I had some savings. Between us, we have stocks and small crypto portfolio. I'm not a big believer in cryptocurrency because, again, it's a very Asian mentality, right? I think I go slowly and I go steadily uphill. Crypto is kind of more like, I can't handle it. It's not for my personality. So between us, we have real estate, stocks, a little bit of crypto. Right now, it's enough that, we are comfortably getting by off passive income from those different streams. Yeah, I think start early. And the thing is, nobody ever complains about having too much money, right? Even if you're not planning to make a major transition, everybody should be saving. And then once you have a little bit of that stuff built up there, then you can, diversify, put it in different products that you believe in personally. Everybody can stand to benefit from being financially free. It just gives them choices as to what they want to do in life. You don't have to want to make a major transition to start saving and investing. It is about really not being a slave to your paycheck that comes in at the end of the month.
I could speak with you forever. You strike me as a very enlightened person, somebody that has really tapped in deep into your intuition and really listened to yourself. And I think that it's so hard in our modern society to do that. We have so many distractions and so many kind of things telling us to go in this one path, like towards this one thing. And I really appreciate how thoughtful you have been about your life and that you're now sharing that with so many other people and encouraging them to do the same. I think in a lot of ways we do similar things. And I just really appreciate that about you, Jean. I wondered, what does success mean to you now? And when you think about your legacy into the future, what do you want your legacy to be?
This whole journey of my life so far has just really taught me that, most of us, we spend a lot of our life exchanging time for money, right? That's the whole job configuration, right? We work really hard for that money coming in. But it's just gotten to the point where it's just really clear to me that the most important things in life cannot be bought with money, and it's all tied up with your time. So success for me now is the definition is all tied in with time, right? It's all the things that money can't buy that's linked with time. Time to surf, to paint, time with my husband, time with my parents, the dogs, being healthy, being safe. I feel successful every day here. It looks really weird to a lot of people because it looks like I'm just doing nothing, hanging out in Bali. But I think this is it for us in the sense of the big picture and the theory, right? I think I want to go further with the YouTube. I want to go further with everything that we create, my paintings. I want to go further with my surfing. I want to build and develop a lot of strong, healthy relationships with people that I care about, even my friends and family back home who are not in the same physical locale as me, but
obviously, in the very beginning, you were very scared to share that this was the path that you wanted to go on. Have they come around and started to understand why you made the choices in your life that you did? And have any followed suit or anybody been interested, like your friends or family?
As far as I'm aware, I am the only person in a huge Singaporean Chinese family who has even done anything remotely close to this. But the rest of my family are very successful. We've got doctors, neurosurgeons, bankers in the family in Singapore, mostly happily married with 2 kids. 2 is the magic number. So actually, when my parents first realized that I wasn't really intending to come back to Singapore after 6 months and pick up with the legal career thing, there was a huge blow up. And after that, my father stopped speaking to me, and he didn't speak to me for about 2 years after. At one point, I even realized that he never told all the rest of our family, the extended family, the uncles and aunties. I think they called and my auntie was asking, how am I? And he was still saying, she's all right at the law firm. This was like a couple of years after I had already been teaching surfing and traveling and teaching yoga and doing all sorts of sports and teaching related stuff. I overheard him talking on the phone and I made that connection, and I was like, so I think he couldn't come to terms with the fact that his daughter, his lawyer in the family, the ex-gifted education program person. I was in the gifted education program in Singapore when I was young. It's basically the top 0.25 to 0.5% of the entire country. So then, they stream you in Singapore. It's very controversial, this whole educational system. They stream you so that eventually, if you're successful, you go to school and you make friends and you end up graduating at university level with all the rest of the other people who are going to be the doctors, the politicians, the lawyers, all the big people in society. And you're just one small circle because you all went to school together. So yeah, I was on that path. And then, I'm now on a beach in Sri Lanka or somewhere else. It was so difficult for my dad. But eventually, my mother convinced him to visit me in Vietnam. And that was the turning point. A couple of years after, maybe 3 years after I started doing this, he actually saw me teaching. I wasn't doing whatever he thought I was doing, dealing drugs or partying or living degenerately. I was living very simply. I was just being very sporty. I had an honest job and I was happy. I was tired, wet, and very tan at the end of every day. But I was very happy and my customers were very happy, and they spoke highly of me. And he came, he saw my little house where I was living alone at that point in time. And he saw my community. And from that point onwards, he started to understand. And I think a couple of years after, he actually tried surfing himself. And I was so proud of the moment where my then 68-year-old dad stood up on the surfboard and went zooming down a wave. He's good. He's really good.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he got it really quickly. And I mean, he's not a young student, right? But he was so happy. And I think him trying that and him getting that wave, surfing down that wave, he understood everything, why I did everything that I have done. So now anyway, things are good. My parents understand, they're supportive. They see that I am happy and it is what they want for me because that's love, right? They just want me to be happy at the end of the day and ideally not begging by the sides of the street. So I am financially comfortable, not in the Singapore sense, but in the sense that I have a very comfortable roof over my head. I eat good food every day. I have enough to feed my dogs, good, nice things, snacks. We live well and hey, we're not even really working. We're doing all passive income. This is great. And my parents, they like my husband, supportive and happy with where we are right now.
That's beautiful. I wondered if you could send a message to yourself 10 years ago. What would you say? Say that you're speaking to another person just like you who kind of went the track that they were supposed to go. What would you say now?
I would say that just hang in there and take it one step at a time each day, but keep moving forwards. I remember very clearly what it was like because I journal and I look back sometimes. And I think the most painful part of the process was when you are feeling as if in your life you are walking forwards in a fog, where the fog is so thick you can't even see your hand if you put it right out in front of you. And it made me cry so much back then because I knew I wanted something so desperately. I know what it was, but I was also so besieged by so much fear. And majority of that fear was actually fear of financial insecurity. Because of my whole background, the way my country thinks, the way my family thinks, the way I was brought up to think, and there I was just running myself dry, going unbelievably low in my reserves because I wanted something so badly and I just didn't know how to get there and stay there, not just be there for a 2-week vacation and pop back into my old life. And that was really painful. But the thing is, the financial insecurity fear, that's all there is. It's a fear. It's not reality. Was I ever really financially insecure? Actually, no, I always found ways to feed myself at the end of the day. I realized that, if you have this open, willing attitude, you have a healthy body, you have a healthy mind, you got a good attitude, right? You'll always find something to do. You'll always be able to resolve yourself work-wise, money-wise, and you should keep moving to your dream because step by little step, you get there, right? Because if you had told me when I was still lawyering, one day I would own a surf business, for example, in reality, I would just have laughed at you, right? Because, my life track was so different from that, so far away from that. It was unimaginable. I had all the money. I could technically invest, but I would never be there running it myself, teaching people directly. No, not possible. But the thing is, I took the first little steps away off tangent, right, from the lawyer's life. And then eventually, many years later, I did end up at my dream. My dream became true. I did own a surf school, and it was a good little boutique surf school. It was good business and highly rated, and everyone was happy who spent money here with us. It seems unimaginable right now, but you just have to keep on walking towards your dream and understand that, I think very little is impossible. I mean, unless you have dreams of going to space and exploring Mars, those kind of things. But personally, I'm a person with, I guess, small dreams. But all I wanted was to have a surf school business somewhere, like a bar with a school surfing attached somewhere on the beach somewhere. It kind of came true, and then after that, later on in life, my dream was to live in Bali because the surf here is good and the people here are wonderful, the food's good, the weather's good. There's so much art and inspiration happening in this place. This is where I want to be. I feel very inspired and creative. It really came true. We couldn't see how we could be here without working, how we could sustain ourselves. A couple of years later, bam, it's happening. It happened. So step by step.
The manifestations of dreams and knowing that they take time and that the fog that you speak of, which I have entered the realms of fog many times in my life where you can't see your hand and you're like, I feel something is pulling me towards this. The fog is your fear and you just keep one foot in front of the other. And I just so agree with everything that you said. I wanted to leave it on one note. Maybe this is a heartbreaking note, but it's something that I ask everybody on the podcast because it is happening all around us. And that's, you're living on an island nation and you've lived there for 2 years. And I'm wondering if you've started to notice the effects of climate change where you are in Bali, because I know that, a lot of the island nations are noticing this more than maybe we notice it here in the States or in Europe.
We've actually been living here per se just for 8 months, but we've spent a lot of summers here previously. You definitely see the effects of global climate change here. It is heartbreaking. There's unseasonal rains. That's the biggest flashing red beacon that, okay, it's not good. Let's do something about it. Also the surf patterns are changing. It's affecting everyone on this island. There's a lot of heavy flooding. It's affecting the infrastructure. Also, the locals tell you that, it's not supposed to be this hot like this right now during this wet season. So definitely or at least we chalk that up to the effects of global climate change. But on the plus side, I also think this is the one place that I've been in recent many years where, they have a plastics ban here on the most shops. Basically, anything outside of a street market, they're using paper bags, or they encourage you to bring your reusable fabric shopping bags. And generally, this place is just like quite environmentally friendly. You see people picking up trash. You see neighborhoods cleaning up their own place. There is very little litter in my neighborhood. And that's because of the behavior of the people in this area. And it's beautiful to observe. I think the Balinese, the way they live is also, there's a huge emphasis on living in harmony with nature. So they like having their architecture with like bamboo, wood, natural substances that last a long time, but, don't contribute negatively to the environment. So this is also one aspect of why we like living here. It is very eco-friendly as far as my immediate environment goes. Right here in Uluwatu, it's lovely. There is a huge plastic trash situation here though, because we're a little island. And in this period, actually, basically, it seems like trash floats out our way and they land on the beaches. And it's really shocking when you go out there and you see what the beach looks like with all that trash, because there's such an unbelievable volume of that. It really brings home the message.
As a tourist going to some island nations, there's a real effort to hide that aspect of that reality of plastics washing up. And I remember going to Phi Phi Island in Thailand, and we hiked to a far part of the island that wasn't really accessible to most tourists. And it was waist deep in plastics garbage because it just wasn't one of the areas that was tended to kind of hide the devastation of it. And I almost wish that more people knew what that looked like. And you being a surfer, I would imagine that you see it in the waves. You see it in the water. You're so intimately connected with nature and the ocean in a way that a lot of people aren't connected. So, well, I have just absolutely loved talking with you, Jean. You are a total inspiration to me. And how do people find you on YouTube? How do they follow along with your journey? And any exciting things that you have coming up in the horizon that you want to share?
Thank you so much for this call, actually, this Zoom call. It has been a real pleasure and an honor meeting with you. Actually, I wouldn't claim to be like some inspirational leader. I think you yourself, you've been through the same path. We connect so well. I'm happy to be putting the word out there if it would help other people. So thank you so much for actually organizing this, for having this whole portal and gathering all these stories, because I think you are bringing light to dark corners out there. I think we don't have anything special planned. We're just on the YouTube channel. We just go about our lives, sharing our thoughts in some episodes, showing off our life here in Bali, good stuff that we believe in, the good food, the good local food, and interesting little corners of Bali that we might explore. We share it online with people. So if people want to check us out, then the channel name is my name, Jean Voronkova.
Thank you again, Jean, for joining us on the show. Wow, isn't she just a remarkable person? I find her words, her voice, just who she is, so soothing. She has really evolved into this kind of higher plane of thinking where she's really tapped in to herself, her needs, her intuition. Some of the key takeaways from this episode. First, life is short, and most of our cultural interpretations of success, when really examined, aren't leading us on a path to happiness, but instead feed an insatiable desire for material gains. Also, going against others' expectations to live a more authentic life can ultimately lead to achieving greater understanding and respect from those who might have questioned your decisions from the beginning. Another takeaway for me is surfing is a way to meditate and be one with the natural world. That act can be incredibly transformative and can help you tune into your inner voice. And I really hope that someday I get to go surfing with Jean in Bali. That is a great dream of mine now. I'm putting it on my bucket list. The last takeaway is true freedom is the ability to be yourself and to do what you love. And it's okay to walk away from convention. It's okay to listen to that inner voice that is telling you that you aren't on the right path and choose another one. We only have one chance at life, and live it the way that you want to live it. Hi, friends. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Urban Exodus podcast. This project is made possible by listener support. I do this work because the people I meet through this project give me hope for the future. And I think we could all use a little more motivation and inspiration in this current moment in history. All of the work that I do through this project is to encourage people to believe in themselves and to work towards a better future for their community and for our planet. Your continued support will keep this passion project running. The easiest way to contribute is to click the support button on the top of urbanexodus.com and pledge any amount that you like. Or you can buy an ad spot in an upcoming episode, shop our online store of rurally made goods, or join our Patreon community for access to bonus features, rapid-fire interviews with podcast guests, videos, live presentations, and so much more. Visit patreon.com/urbanexodus. Another way to support is by giving us a 5-star rating on iTunes and recommending Urban Exodus to your friends. Thank you again for helping me continue to do this work. I couldn't do this without all of you. You can find Urban Exodus on Instagram and Facebook at The Urban Exodus. To read more in-depth features on folks who ditched the city and went country, visit urbanexodus.com. Until next time, I'm Alyssa Hessler, and this is The Urban Exodus.